Hello. Thanks for coming out today to listen to Kate and I talk about SBOMs and supply chain security and so forth. We are supposed to say that this is for educational purposes only, doesn't represent the opinions of RSA, maybe not even my opinions, but we're here anyways and we're still going to say it. I am Chris Blask. I am currently the Vice President of Strategy for Cybeats, which is an SBOM tooling company, and I'm co-chairing one of Alan Friedman's CISA working groups of sharing and so forth, and I think about supply chain a lot. And Kate?
I'm Kate Stewart. I work at the Linux Foundation, and I'm focusing on open source and embedded projects, basically, and have been working with Alan Friedman on one of the CISA SBOM working groups as well for the last couple of years when it was at NTIA. And so trying to figure out how we can use safety and security in open source and best practices and adopting them into the whole ecosystem. So looking at it from those perspectives, this is why we're here, and we're sort of looking at how do we work with SBOMs.
How do we put all this stuff together?
Yeah.
So our premise that we're putting forth is that software bill of materials, specifically supply chain intelligence, if you want to use a broader word, changes everything. And we're here at RSA at the Cybersecurity conference talking about cybersecurity because it's what we do. But we'll find that risk management, operations, licensing, compliance, all these things, visibility, transparency in software development saves a lot of time and money for a lot of different stakeholders. We'll try to walk through some of those, and we'll take a specific dive into critical infrastructure and the grid. Put it in context for everybody so we can walk through it one step at a time. So as we know, here in the States, we have 16 critical infrastructure sectors. Different countries have different numbers, but at the end of the day, all of this stuff has been getting more and more cyberized and computerized year to year, and we're more dependent and therefore more at risk of security and other software supply chain cyber risks than we have been in the past.
And so the critical infrastructure and the utility area is definitely a focus for attacks. And it is actually moving from more of the sort of the human attack into some more of the how do we get at it and work at the supply chains for it. And so like, the Brazilian energy utilities have been at it, the, Encel companies that are focusing on the energy sector. So this was an interesting one for us to look at. The supply chain attacks with the Colonial Pipeline, everyone sort of got aware of that here in the US. It's not quite that way, but as you can see, we've got critical infrastructure today having a mix of open source and proprietary in it. A lot of it has been proprietary historically, and it is shifting more to open source. So more of the behaviors that are in open source and the issues that are open source are going to be applying into these sectors. Various companies do surveys every year, and from Synopsys and Sonatype and so forth. And the estimates are anywhere between 90 to 98% of all code bases have open source in them at some way, shape, or form. And then the percentage of that code bases that have some in them, about 70%, seems to be what people are accepting as a reasonable starting point here. The other thing that's been a trend that's been happening over the last 5 years is the number of components that make up a product has been dramatically increasing, and each of these components potentially could be vulnerable, et cetera. And so understanding exactly what you have in your system is more important than ever. Because the trend is to basically, modularization makes things efficient, lets you, innovate new features, bring new things online quickly. And so you have to be able to actually know what you've got. And sometimes it's easier to put things together than to actually record what you've put together. And so trying to get this automated is one of the things both of us think is pretty important for the ecosystem. Now, we were talking initially the 16 sectors for the US. The Japanese also have a number of cybercritical. So this report came out, the Cybersecurity Policy for Critical Infrastructure Protection, came out last summer from them. And the one thing I want to kind of highlight in here is maintenance of, sorry, can't read with the thing. It's the safety principles. Basically, safety is an important part of anything that's critical infrastructure. And so understanding how we can actually get so that we can automatically understand whether or not we have to work with retesting, revalidating for the safety analysis as well as the cyber analysis, is one of the big open questions. And like I say, the Japanese have recognized it, other people are recognizing it. We're right now trying to crawl on the security side, but we need to keep this long-term vision in mind if we want to get there. Because otherwise, we have to go through another big exercise like we've been doing now. So, a couple years ago, the Biden administration basically put out the minimum elements, SBOM elements, and everyone is doing a really nice job now of starting to line up and be able to produce them. We're not as far as we all want to be yet, but the trend has started, and we are getting more people starting to consume them and enrich them and use them for intelligence. And so this table is coming right out of the NTIA publication that was referred to in the executive order, and it's looking for a supplier, component, a version of the component. If you've got other unique coordinates like a CPE number or something like that, pull that in. And then how do these components relate to each other? How's the graph? What's the knowledge graph? How does this all interact? That is where we can start to use the automation to actually understand, are we vulnerable or not? Components, then we also want to know who did this, who summarized this, and when was it done? All of these are factors. So it's a very small list of elements, but it provides a really good foundation for starting the analysis off. And different points in time in the life cycle of software have access to these same sorts of elements, but with different views on them. So when you're looking at a software life cycle, you have, let me go around the edge. You've got information that's sort of available at these points. And when you finish your build and you release your product, you've got all this stuff for certain. But you also have variants of this stuff at the source level, at the build level. And then when you configure it and install it in your system, you know what you're putting on your system. You know how you've tweaked it. You might want to record that, because some things may be reachable, some things won't be, depending on how you've installed it and what you've configured as you installed. And then what your runtime is looking like, maybe a factor. And when you even start this all off, you've got specs, you've got requirements, you've got traceability. This information is key and needs to be collected for us to really understand how this system is going to work together. So the trouble we were seeing last year, and I think Alan and myself were talking about this in this room, on these rooms here, is we didn't really have a way of describing it. They were all just SBOMs to us. So the last 6 months, there's been a group that's been coming together, initially in the OpenSSF and then in CISA, to start to figure out, okay, what types of SBOMs are there out there? And how does this sort of relate to what people are seeing? And we've come up with 6 terms for describing these types of SBOMs. And there is initially, oops, sorry. I gave you a preview. There's the design one, which is when you're coming up with your requirements and your spec, what components do you think you're going to be bringing in? Oh, next one is the source one. Okay. Hey, I'm bringing in these open source projects. I want to record all the information I know about them as they're coming in so I can refer to it later. I'm going about, or quite frankly, I've got a contractual relation with someone and I'm doing procurement. And so when you bring it in, they want to cross-check, and the procurement people want to make sure everything's saying what they do, the contract terms are all set. There's information there about what you're bringing in that is useful to record. As you assemble it all together into your product, whether it's to a customer or to pass down the supply chain, what you've assembled together, what actually makes it together is part of your build SBOM. And then we switch over to the consumer, and when you bring it into the consumer, oh, hey, I've gotten this product from someone. I want to record the actual image you brought, and when I got it, and hey, how I've configured it and deployed it. Again, those component pieces, that information you saw before, has most of what you need. And then further down, you may want to look at a runtime. Hey, I've got this system in production. I've got all these containers on it. What's actually executing? So you might want to instrument something, you may want to take traces, things like that. And you want to look over a period of time to see, hey, I've got this stuff there, it doesn't match what I think I've deployed. So there's reasons for looking at all these different perspectives. And so a lot of people were talking about these perspectives with only their own view in mind. They didn't know that, someone talking about a deployed SBOM or a runtime SBOM to someone talking about a source SBOM we had a recipe for a lot of people basically butting heads when they didn't need to, is what it comes down to. So working as a wider group, we managed to basically tease apart these definitions. And as of last Friday, and this is in the slides, there is the link is up now on CIS's website. And so these definitions are there, so you can refer to them in more detail, as well as sort of the strengths and weaknesses and when to possibly apply them. It's a 2-pager, it's a short document. It's not this 50-page monstrosity, but it's there, and hopefully it'll be helpful for people to sort of start to talk in a language that everyone will understand, or at least get closer. And so it's not exact when you can do these types of SBOMs, but there's a rough approximation, okay? So like when you're in planning, you may be doing your design SBOM. Again, procurement and development, you may want to record source SBOM, but you may also record in what you've brought into your system as some sort of deploy. You also may want to record as you go through your build, your tool chains, any tests you're running, the release information, how it's all put together, what's your final configuration. And there's lots of partial ones along the way, and then they get assembled. And so being able to be explicit about tracking things back and linking things is going to, I think, be the path to sanity here, rather than sticking everything in one SBOM at the end, all the way back to source, because people don't want to do that. They don't need to most of the time. But if you need to go the next level down, you have a way of expressing how you need it. And that's part of having a language so you can talk about the problem. After you've gotten, you've taken your product and you've handed it off to someone, or someone's downloaded it, whatever, as it's being configured and installed, recording the information is something that we're going to be doing all the time in critical infrastructure. Similarly in critical infrastructure, anything you do with the build, your compiler information, the options for your build, all of these are things that may have a role in the actual use cases, in the analysis that has to happen for certain use cases and for requirements, as well as recording all the test evidence to prove that you satisfied the requirements. And so being able to have the framework to discuss this and record it is going to play a role. And then as you retire and maintain things and retire, it may make sense to look at runtime SBOMs and do some instrumentation and just say, hey, is this match what I think I've deployed? Does it really point back to the right deployed things, or is something underneath changed and I've got a surprising dynamic library that's suddenly playing a factor here? Okay? And then obviously when you've retired, you may need to do your next life cycle. But these are sort of the main terms we sort of used, and hopefully this will help with the clarity. So when you're trying to understand the system, the key is going to be the traceability. You've got your runtime SBOM sitting there, or a deployed SBOM, and you should be able to link that back to the deployed SBOMs that you've worked with. You should be able to link to your deployed SBOMs back to the build SBOMs that created them, and those build SBOMs may be back to other SBOMs. Okay? That's how we should be able to work this system together. And if we're working on safety critical, we need to go back to the source in a lot of cases too, depending on the criticality levels and so forth. So being able to extend this back in a modular fashion, so you don't need to carry it if you don't care about it. But if you do care about it, you have that access to it. I think this is where we're going to need to be heading, and this is why modularity is very key in this space. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris to talk about grid.
In the grid. So we get very practical when we get to, as Kate's saying, safety systems. This is a security conference. We tend to be IT people, but there's OT as well, right, Bob? Right? That when you get right down to it, some of you may know that I spend a lot of time building boats while I'm sailing across the ocean. Right? Safety is a very, very, very specific thing. And in all these critical infrastructures and critical infrastructure in general, the grid is talked about all the time. The lights are on right now, which is kind of handy. So how do we look at this? Right now, the conversation that Kate and I and Alan and a lot of folks in this room are part of or following along in sharing is just trying to agree on this. Who are the stakeholders? The obvious first stakeholders are the producer of software and the consumer of software. But if you let your eyes walk down this path, we have open source. As Kate's talking about, you have a source out there is making some open source. They're a stakeholder in this, they're involved. You have the vendor who's taking that perhaps open source, closed source, whatnot, creating a product. You have the integrator that's taking multiple products and turning them into a solution, like electric substation. You have the regulators, they're involved, they have a stake in this, they would like to know, have the visibility, understand that you're being compliant, or that regulations need to evolve over time. The service providers, people who are doing work for the utility as not part of the utility, but as an external contract, external service authority. The industry associations themselves. In the grid here in the States, we have the American Public Power Association and the National Rural Electrical Co-op Association, which I've always called NRECA, but apparently you don't like that, so NRECA. Now, these are organizations with thousands of small utilities. Now, they're not directly in the supply chain, but they are the community of information sharing and shared interests in these spaces. We don't quite know yet, but I think they have a stake in this as well. I think it's fairly obvious. We're still trying to stitch all these things together. Private sector information sharing, ISACs, ISOs, again, not just in the States, all over the world, much like the industry associations, but in this case, sort of focusing on security. You know, how do they share information? How do we take threat intelligence that ISACs and ISOs are sharing and add supply chain intelligence to that? They're definitely in the chain. They're a stakeholder here as well. Public sector, you know, our public sector partners here in the States, Tomo JP CERT in Tokyo is part of these conversations as well. They have a stake in this. Data value addition providers. Very interesting category. We're not sure what to call them, right? Some of you are in this room, right? Companies that will debride chips in the hardware space, you know, do assessments, security assessments, reliability assessments, safety assessments. They're involved in this as well. A lot of those companies are actively involved in the working groups that Kate and I are talking about. Then finally, the utility themselves, who's buying the product or buying the product from an integrator that's being operated by a service provider, particularly in the small utilities. They're obviously a stakeholder. But at the end of the day, you know, lights are on, lights are not on. If the lights are not on because your utility upstream and the regulator and everyone upstream hasn't done their stuff right, suddenly you're going to be changing the laws.
And this became very personal to me a couple years ago when Texas went through the big freeze. And I did not have power for the week, and my pipes froze and everything else, which I was not quite expecting to happen. And suddenly it came home that, yes, I was very dependent on the electric grid and it working reliably. So safety is important.
Safety is important. Now, supply chain intelligence, software inventory, in trying to explain this to external stakeholders outside of security, in the financial space and so forth, trying to explain to them that we spend trillions of dollars buying and making software, and we're not sure where we put it. We're not quite sure. Log4j, the Stuxnet of supply chain, we all know those stories. If you don't know where the software is, it turns out it takes a long time to find it, which is really expensive, you know, maybe literally fatal in safety systems, maybe fatal to your company. So all of these different, the eye candy, you know, you can walk around that, and I'm not going to talk to this slide too much, but all of these stakeholders are involved in some obvious ways, some less obvious ways. I like the isolated industry association up there. As I say, they're not really involved in these conversations, but they need to be. They will be. You know, they already have the connections. And the functions. You know, we do all this stuff because things need to be done. Lights need to stay on, not because we need to deal with cybersecurity or anything else. We have individual functions in all the businesses, but again, critical infrastructure, operational technology really sharpens the point in the conversation. And as you see, again, I could talk through all of this, you know, for time purposes, but at each level, you know, the open source developers need to moderate their risk landscape. You know, there's multiple values in each of these, but you know, just working through it, managing risk and efficiency as the vendors. It costs a lot of money. Responding to the supply chain incidents costs a lot of money, but just going through normal daily operations costs a lot of money. Risk and efficiency there is huge. The integrators, we're all right now, as we speak, you know, between this RSA, last RSA, and next RSA, I think we'll clarify this more, but the integrators. What exactly are the integrators going to do? Kate will talk through this a little bit, but part of it is strengthening those relationships. One of the big findings for me out of the first SBOM POC in healthcare was that the vendor found that they basically just had better customer relations because they're more transparent about their existing relationships. It's easier for their customers to be involved. I think same thing upstream and downstream for the integrators. We'll see how that works out. Validation and compliance, service providers supporting their service level agreements that are important to them. Managing member risk, and you look at the charters for the industry associations, they're lined up with this already and figuring out their spot on this. Information sharing in the private and public sectors. Data value addition providers, this is literally their business. They tend to be smaller companies, but they've been involved in this for a long time. You know, supply chain security hasn't been a big deal. But, as I mentioned, debraiding chips, literally getting all the way medieval on the assessment of equipment for critical infrastructure is a thing. So we have some organizations here in the States and globally that have a lot of experience there and a lot to add. The utility themselves, of course, and the rest of us out here would like to have the lights on. So, what's this your slide or mine?
It's okay, we can both talk to it.
There we go.
Okay, and so each of these stakeholders probably has an SBOM they're probably going to care about and interact with a fair amount. Open source developers, well, source, okay? And so that seems an obvious one. At least having the source SBOMs there. A vendor's going to probably be taking in source SBOMs and creating their build SBOMs. An integrator is probably taking build SBOMs for the components they're bringing in and creating their own product build SBOM and passing it downstream. A regulator may want to audit someone's built or deployed SBOM. A service provider, look at the incoming sources. Okay, procurement and legal gets involved potentially here, and the build SBOM again. The industry associations, what sort of norms of SBOMs are type of required? They're probably going to want to weigh in on that, and what sort of norms are amongst their community. Private sector, they're probably going to be looking at, sharing what's happening in the build SBOMs. Public sector, okay, cross-checking when the MVD and some of the security, the vulnerability things are happening, looking into SBOMs and understanding, am I affected or not? It's probably going to be happening across a wide set of these stakeholders. The data is probably going to be looking at that product build. The utility is probably going to be looking at the product build as well, and possibly recording how they've deployed it. So you've got your deployed SBOMs. And hopefully when we have all these SBOMs in there, as a utility customer, hopefully I'm going to be happier.
Right, and if we're not, that's why we're all stakeholders in all of this, because supply chain is literally all of it, consumer at the end. And if we can't be kept happy, everything changes upstream. We will drive policy.
And vulnerabilities are going to be happening all the way through this. Okay, so we've got to be able to figure out how we can react and modularize it, segment it, and be able to react to it effectively and efficiently. So, what's this all going to look like in 10 years?
Right. So we have three scenarios we're going to walk you through. Again, this applies generally everywhere, but keeping it simple, critical infrastructure, the electric grid specifically. Right. You're an electric utility, and the first scenario is an integrator delivering a solution. How do I take multiple products, bring them together, and deliver them to an end customer or utility at all? And how do I do it in this world, in this context? The utility operations installing a product. How do I go about acquiring a product and deploying it in this sort of structure where I want to, perhaps I've decided to, perhaps I'm regulated to or forced to, have this level of visibility in place at the beginning. And the last one, the utility managing a security fix. Lots of vulnerabilities out there, but this vulnerability right now requires the utility to do something. How is that done?
Okay. So let's look at the first one. An integrator delivering a solution. Right now you have a vendor. He may be bringing in some source, creating a source SBOM, or picking up the source SBOM that's associated with it, and creating a build SBOM. And that is going to be, for his product. Okay, next vendor. He's taking it and he's basically building a product. He's coming in from proprietary code. He may not have his own, each of them are going to have different levels of what they're going to draw on. We're going to have to expect that. However, if they're shipping something that they're going to sell, they should have an SBOM. Okay? And so both of these possibly have SBOMs. Someone's going and creating and integrating and put into a solution and creating their own product. Hey, they're going to create an SBOM, but they're going to be referring to those other two SBOMs. Or they may try to import them and then embed it. But if it's the same, why embed it? Why not just refer to it and just ship them as a package and then figure out where you want to draw your boundaries of what you share outwards? On the other hand, they will have a specific build SBOM that refers to the components that come into them. And then eventually when it's delivered and deployed, hopefully there's certain things that are recorded as well that may refer back to that build SBOM. And so in this way, we have ways of keeping it simple. Like say, you record what you know. You focus on what you know, not all the heuristics that you want to try to guess everything through the system, but what you know, and then what you can actually say with confidence from coming from your supply chain and link it back with some degree of trust. If we can get into that mode, I think we will be moving it forward. So anytime you're shipping a binary, you should be shipping an SBOM. Think of it that way. Next issue, I guess, is, okay, I'm a utility operator. I've installed this. Hey, okay, I'm the vendor. There's a build SBOM. He ships the build SBOM to the procurement department at the utility. Utility is bringing it in, looking at it, recording in their database, knowing what they may want to monitor, what they may not, and then they give it to the operations team inside that utility. And that operation team is one that is installing it in their system. And as they install in their system, they should be recording the facts of how they installed it, and keeping that information with links back to that build SBOM, such that they're in a reasonably much better position to monitor the vulnerabilities. Because if they haven't installed a component and there's a vulnerability in a component that's part of a big package, they can say it. They should be able to say it right then if they're not affected or not, and not have to do a lot of work. And I think we've got way too much false positives in this ecosystem right now. And by segmenting this stuff up so that you can focus on facts as opposed to guesses, you're going to be removing a lot of these false positives. And then that's what's going on in the devices. So obviously, bugs happen. We see many sources of bugs coming into this. Bugs can be coming in from the MVD. You know, someone could be flagging it from somewhere else, and we go, oh, we're affected. Oh, the integrator may say, we've learned from someone else we're affected. Okay, we better tell you. Or, you know, there may be other heuristics, or the team inside may find something. Oh, this looks weird. Okay, what's happening? So what the utility company can then do is, hey, search through that deployed SBOM, back to maybe to the source, the build, and maybe if you need to go back even to the sources, and you know, is the source actually included? Can you say definitively whether the source is included? And if you can say that it's not included, you're done. If you do need to have a mitigation though, then you can go back to, you know, you can go back to your integrator and say, hey, I want my fix. I've got a service pack with you. Give me my fix, please. And the integrator will basically incorporate the new patches, create a new binary, and quite frankly, generate a new SBOM, okay? At some point in time, you may want to, you know, have reference and say this new SBOM, you know, supersedes or replaces the original SBOM, but it should be not patches upon patches. Every time there's a binary, there should be an SBOM. Just think of it that way. And then the integrator passes that on to the procurement group that they say, see, here, we've done our service for you. Here's a fix. And hopefully at that point in time, the procurement people, before they deploy it, can confirm that we've got our safety profiles adhered to, because it has to work in a system. And so getting this so that the safety profile is adhered to has been considered, is going to refer to that new build SBOM. And then once everyone's satisfied, hey, they pass it to operations, operations deploys it, you've got a new deployed SBOM that refers to that new build SBOM. And if we can do this type of modularization and incorporate these thoughts over time, like I say, I think that'll give us a path towards sanity as these SBOMs are evolving, especially for the safety critical spaces.
Right. And, you know, this, you know, I just want to draw attention to this for a minute, right? Because this is, again, I'm old now, which is awesome, you know, bonus rounds. And I've seen these sort of cycles go through before, right? You know, in critical infrastructure, OT monitoring was a big deal, you know, and it turns out that once you turn it on, you can't turn it off, you know, because, you know, seeing what's going on is kind of important. And we don't quite have this yet. You know, this is kind of out there. Some people are doing these things. It's a very leading edge. However, once this falls in place, and it will, over the next couple of years, you know, everybody's going down this path together. You know, we live in the world without this now. This is going to seem a little strange, right? We literally don't know where we put things, right? You know, we go through these expensive processes over and over again where we're trying to figure out where we put things that we bought and we installed. So
and because there's a safety aspect in some of these here, especially in the critical infrastructure, there's sometimes a desire to say, well, I'm not sure. I don't want to do the work. Because a lot of the safety analysis is very manual, very time consuming today, and we need to be able to automate that too. And I think with some of this path, we're on the way towards that. So.
I agree. So before we get into the Q&A, so anybody who wants to Q&A, line up at the mics or start throwing fruit or however you want to do that. But some of the things we recommend going forward is that depending on who you are, right? And again, we get back to the values and so forth. There's lots of these things apply to different folks. But in thinking about it, as vendors, you need to be generating the source and the build SBOMs, the key components you ship, right about now. Right? In certain sectors, you're not allowed to ship, or you're getting prohibited to ship without doing that. But link these things together. In the integrators, build that SBOM, link the SBOMs for components, really work with your vendors. Right? You'll find that today, as opposed to last year, people are much more willing to work with you on the vendor space. Start putting those systems in place. The operators generate that deployed SBOM for key components, and you deploy it on your system, link the build of the SBOMs, contract language. Build it in. Say, I will not consider buying your product if you can't prove to me the diligence in managing the software in the first place. Mm-hmm. And within, we were going to share this slide. Do you want to do the slide?
Go for it.
There we go. For the next 6 months, as operator, you should be looking at linking these things together, have a plan, have a path forward in that. And the integrators, again, as it says there, link it back to the source SBOMs, but again, it's relationships, put in place the relationships, augment and enhance the relationships you already have with the suppliers you already use to build solutions for customers.
And I'd also add into this, basically start to engage your safety analysis teams on the integrator and on the deploy side, so that they start to be aware of these concepts and can ask their questions as this stuff is emerging, so they're all bought into.
So for this gentleman over here, who I've never seen before and was not arranged in advance at all,
Go for it.
who are you and what's your question?
Hi, Duncan Sparrow, Fractal Consulting, long-term SBOM advocate. First of all, great talk, good job. My question's on a combination.
Oh, yeah. Microphone? Is it?
Am I just not close enough to the mic?
Apparently.
Sorry. Duncan Sparrow, long-term SBOM advocate. Lift it up a little. My question's a combination of this slide and slide 12. Could you go back to slide 12 for a second?
I can try.
Okay, you've got the clicker. Go for it.
Fire away while I'm queuing.
That one. So first of all, I love the circle. It's really good. However, I don't think it's actually a circle. I think it's a spiral, okay? And I think that's going to overlap in the middle there. And I really like the end. You're, next week, 3 months, 6 months. So my question's a time question on legacy. Everyone always brings up, hey, but I got all this old crap in my system. Do you see the getting around to the legacy stuff as a year from now, 10 years from now? What's your guess on that hidden bullet at the bottom that seems to worry everybody a lot?
I think that start doing what you have line of sight in now. Right. And then what you're missing, be explicit. It's a known unknown. And we have ways of being able to capture that in our minimum elements. And so, hey, and then as this circle or spiral evolves, those pieces will suddenly be there. And hopefully when you put your contract language in, some of those pieces will emerge as well. So I'd say just start today.
And like OT monitoring, like network visibility, the lesson is that having some is better than having none. And I think this is the same sort of thing. It's an incremental value of understanding what you have in some areas and what you're harder to. So please.
So I have two questions, but first is not a question. First is a request for more information, and I'll do the. That is for VEX and VDR. You have it on slide 23, I think it is, but you don't explain it. I'll just ask you to do that after you answer this question. So many times the build SBOM does not include everything from the source SBOM.
Correct.
And when we're talking about traceability back, especially open up to attacks, because the source SBOM may have bugs that the build SBOM doesn't employ.
Correct.
However, an attacker may trace it back and figure out how to manipulate anyway. How do we guard against that kind of situation? So
by putting hooks into the build infrastructure so that you export these SBOMs, you can be very authoritative about exactly which files made it into your build rather than just looking at things at the component level. If you want an example of this, there is a dashboard for the Zephyr project where every build generated and passed image has 3 SBOMs with it today. And there's over 400 boards, over 6 apps. So it's like I say, it's been incorporated, it's in the build flow, it just happens automatically, and that's where we need to really aim for. But that built SBOM links back to the source files that are all hashed. So you have traceability to the sources, and you have things compartmentalized in terms of the relationships. So we are not there in the wide ecosystem today, but if we aim ourselves to get to that point, as that is a good done requirement, I think we'll be in a better place than just saying, oh, it's just this component. Well, yeah, that gives you some information, but false positives and removing those false positives is what I'd like to see wrung out of the ecosystem.
My buddy's wicked smart. Sir.
Hi, David Hominy. I'm with WWT, and I'm curious. So I come not probably like most people out of the development side. I come from app and API and workload security side. So I see the use for all of this. But do you see that the software bill of materials is now being used to help fix these issues, not necessarily just at the code level, but also upstream at the security devices? So I now know what, okay, is everything that's in my application, so now I should be able to use that intelligence to better secure that. Is that,
It's
are
starting.
you seeing that
We're
happen?
starting to see it now, yeah.
Okay.
One of my co-leads in the tooling working group is working for a medical device manufacturer, and they are incorporating all this information. And we've been doing these healthcare proof of concepts with hospitals. And the hospitals actually with New York Presbyterian Hospital, actually wrote a consumption tool and open sourced it. And so this is like the IT team at that hospital wrote the tool, open sourced it to ingest SBOMs, match the vulnerabilities. They did this with the mindset that the smaller hospitals couldn't do it, but hey, all small businesses could use this, right? So the project's called Daggerboard, and it's widely available. It's up on open source, like I say, it's up on GitHub. So you look at New York Presbyterian and look for Daggerboard, and you would find that project there, and that will ingest it and then do lookups to the vulnerability database. Both of the, like I say, I spend more time with the SPDX format, but in that we've got like tools up there on our repos to say, go look here. Here's an SBOM. Go look up what the vulnerabilities you can find associated with this SBOM are. So people are putting these tools out there, and other people are starting to incorporate them. And so there's a whole wealth of commercial offerings as well that do this as a business. And then there's also tools in the open source that people can go and work with if they don't have the budgets.
Sure.
If it's okay, I would like to ask two questions.
Sure.
One is on slide 14, which says a traceability of SBOM, right? What exactly is that traceability? Are you talking that there's a big SBOM and then there's a subset of
it's
SBOMs? Or?
links. Think about it as links. So that runtime SBOM is saying, hey, I've seen all these things here. Okay, I want to match that back to that deployed SBOM.
Is that a subset?
It's a sub and a superset because there may be more things running on the system. Like, systems are running an operating system. Someone may have upgraded the operating system underneath you, underneath the app, right? And so what you thought you were running when everything was deployed may have slightly shifted at the runtime dependency level. And knowing exactly which runtime dependencies you're vulnerable, you're sensitive to is an important factor here.
Okay.
And so but all of these are just basically links from one file to another. So think of it that way.
Okay. The second question is, imagine I'm delivering a software to a customer and I make SBOM part of it. What exactly do you recommend our customers do with the SBOM file?
Well, I would basically recommend the customers do something like take that open source project called Daggerboard and import those SBOMs that they've received from you, and then start monitoring to see if there's a vulnerability coming up on it. Unless they've got a service agreement with you, and then you're supposed to be looking out for them, because you've got money from them, right?
And the electric grid's a good example for this. There's 6,000 utilities in the U.S. Most of them are very small. So my recommendation to them is, again, build it into your requirements. You're going to have somebody else operating for it. You need to say, if you're not doing what Kate just said, we're not buying your stuff. Sir.
Yeah, I guess my question's sort of interrelated to that. When your vendor and your customers are asking you for your SBOM, there's a balance between you want to share so that you are fixing the issues you have, but you don't want that information to get too far and open up your attack surface.
Yep.
So this is, I find it really, really interesting, having been, run the gauntlet of sticks and taxi and threat intel and so forth, and now supply chain, same sort of issues, right? And among my, even more time, good. And among my my thoughts on this is that, see the time clock, I distracted me there for a second.
Sticks and taxis, threat
Right.
intelligence,
So these same issues, IP control. And quite often in these transitional periods in any industry, but in our industry, you start looking at the concern and how we're doing things now. So IP, intellectual property control today, is managed by corporations and governments large and small using the greatest of gifts, hope. right? You know, I wrote a contract, I've hired people, and they don't actually read the contract that I signed with whoever, but I'm assuming that they'll probably try to not share things for reasons of security like that, but we have no way of really knowing. So the concerns, and there's a whole, you know, line of reasoning and thought behind that, where, you know, the hackers already know this stuff, your competitors probably already know this stuff. So are we doing a good risk valuation, right? You know, how complicated is it going to be, you know, to solve this, and how are we doing things now? Those questions sort of work themselves out. But, you know, and again, I mentioned that I'm co-chairing the sharing group, right? And I backed into this.
Yeah, you got right into his happy plot.
Oh, God. So I backed into this whole SBOM thing by saying, well, I want a bill of materials for this, because right now I'm an authorized user of it. I would like to know everything I need to know about this, right? It has to link back through maybe you know, I'm allergic to plastic and I want to know where the plastic came from, right? You know, so the system has to allow for all of that. When you find as you walk through it, that it's just a matter of relationships between individual organizations, right? You know, that you already have a relationship with your customer. You already have a relationship with your provider. So just enunciating that better, being more clear
and having
about
the language that be crisp about it. But, you know, think about having a car. There is a bill of materials sitting out there somewhere for a car.
Right.
You get an abstracted version of it. And you may want to be sharing that so that you know whether things are affected. And then there's software sometimes now
I was
in
going
these
to say,
cars
that ties
too.
into my next question.
Okay.
Right.
Which is microservices. Now I got 100,
Oh, up in the cloud,
500,000
okay.
containers. Each
Yeah.
of them are moving at different speeds.
Right.
Some are changing multiple times per day. Some will stay stable for 6 months. They each have their own SBOMs.
Correct.
Do I now have to maintain 100, 500,000 SBOMs?
If you have
No.
a, well,
yes, no. See? Go ahead.
it's an open question. There are working groups tackling this type of issue right now.
Yeah.
There's a question of, do you just maintain what's the APIs and are they stable or not?
Okay.
Or do you actually potentially have, because there's services that are changing all the time, different frequencies, bugs, fixes, and so forth, there may be new vulnerabilities intercepted. So I guess it depends on, are you in critical infrastructure or not? Okay, if you're in critical infrastructure, please do. Please do make sure that any service you're aware of, that you have a line of sight into the dependencies underneath that service. Okay.
Got it.
If you're just, you know, oh, I'm just, you know, chatting, you know, I'm just doing some simple on my own home time, probably doesn't matter. Okay. And you just care that the APIs are the same for your application, things like that. But on the critical infrastructure side, I think having that full line of sight is going to be key for us all.
Right, and given that, I'll underline my no answer,
Okay.
which is, yeah, I brought this one, right? You know, so you think about it, it looks like a network diagram. When you think about supply chain intelligence sharing, one of the interesting artifacts I think is that, you know, we're cognitively impaired because we look at this and say, well, a network diagram is about connecting that to that, and information flows from point A to point B. So I agree with Kate on all of this, and in fact we were going to this anyways, but, you know, the real answer is no, you don't need the 200,000 SBOMs. You need, in advance, the relationships set up and enunciated, so if and when you need one of those SBOMs, you get it right now, right? This is not, you think about a car. How many bill of material items could you possibly have with an average car?
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
I buy cars.
actually, now that a lot of the cars have software, and there's have these software-defined vehicles coming in, and we've got the Linux operating systems and all the microcoders, you know, all the MCUs and everything else, it's getting pretty significant, actually.
Right, an airframe. You know, with the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland, you know, there's, you know, an interesting use case where we want to be able to say, all right, I work for a National Air Force, I'm a flight engineer, I'm looking at a turbine mounted in a Boeing airframe, and there's that one blade there, and I would like to know the software that was running on the machine tool of the subcontractor who made that blade. Now, does that mean that before I buy the airframe, that I want to get a list of all the SBOMs? No, but I have to have the relationship set up, and it may not be security. Maybe there's a weird version of the software that causes a weakness in the weld. Who knows? Right? So it's establishing all these relationships so that you can have when you need.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, you know how there's a saying, knowing is half the battle. So knowing is half the battle when it comes to SBOM. So not every organization is going to build everything they make. They're going to buy stuff, right? And the stuff that they buy at some point is going to be out of date. And that vendor relationship that you have, what the problem that we tend to see is if you have a vendor AMI, for example, an image from a vendor, you know what's inside that AMI but then you have to depend on that vendor to update that AMI or that, that piece of software or code. Just knowing the SBOM is like I said,
So
just half the battle.
anytime that yeah, it's half the battle, and it's a trust but verify. And if you have an SBOM, you have a chance of doing the verification and saying, what's happening here? However, anytime you get an update from that vendor that you're downloading a new image, you should begin downloading a new SBOM.
No.
And then
So
you can see the diff.
So what I'm getting at though, there's gonna be vulnerabilities in that image or that piece of software or thing you have, widget, whatever, right? And you have to basically live with it until that vendor updates it. Because if you can't modify that vendor piece of code or that vendor image, because you then could essentially bring down that particular system, you know. So any insights you have into dealing with vulnerabilities into something you don't control, but yet it's part of your SBOM of your organization.
I think
I'll leave it there.
you've hopefully had a contractual relationship with that person. You've got something you don't control. And this is where you get your procurement and your legal team intact and say, we need this service, you know, we need this done immediately type of deal, assuming you've got something contractual. If you've built something and you don't have that type of contractual and it's sort of an ambiguous blob, if it's open source, you have a chance to hire a contractor to help you fix it, or hire someone from the industry. But I think it's, you know, using the procurement flows the same way you're going to do it with anything else. But yeah, sometimes there's a gap and these things need to be fixed. Agreed.
And I apologize, but I'm going to use, you know, foul language on stage. So VEX, you know, the vulnerability exploitability exchange, you know, is a parallel thread. You know, it's not really has anything to do with SBOMs, but you know, to a previous question, you know, vendors, and I am one, I've been one, you know, most of my career, we get concerned in saying, yeah, we got vulnerabilities, we're supposed to admit it. You know, can we have a way of saying, yes, you're vulnerable, but if it's deployed, you know, whatever. If it's deployed as we recommended, it's not exploitable. It is exploitable if it's deployed as recommended, so do these three things. So, and again, to Kate's point, it's all about the relationship. You know, the responsibility is theirs. Make sure you enunciate that, you know, get that information down, and there are ways to get effective information to do things. Thank you. Sir.
Doug Coleman from Lutron Electronics. And as a vendor, you scared the heck out of me when you're talking that I need to be able to go back and figure out what software version was running when this blade was manufactured at what time.
Yes.
Because we do CI/CD. I have hundreds of deployments a day.
Right.
If I have to track an SBOM for every deployment for everything that's ever been done, I'm talking exabytes of data monthly. There's got to be some sanity in this, right? What's the reality between this optimal ideal state and as a vendor, I need to be able to do things that make sense?
Well, let me do a quick hold my coffee on that. You know, so cloud, AI, ephemeral code that is created, you know, this is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
So not just your case, but
There's a whole
you
bunch
know,
of other cases.
add zeros. You know.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have your build infrastructure. Can you put a hook in it such that you are creating and putting out the data that is flowing through it?
I mean, yes, we can
Yes,
put
you
hooks
can.
in various places, but
Right.
it's
So
still
all
just
you have to do
ridiculous
is
amounts of
capture the
data.
key information, and compared to the prior state, has it changed significantly or not? And then just keep an updated version in a database so that any date stamp time.
Significantly is a loaded term.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But
Okay.
you know, it's risk management, okay? And so risk management is, hey, at least you know whenever there's a change and there's a record somewhere that what happened in your thing. You're tracking this stuff anyhow in logs. The logs have got this stuff in it. Just export it so it's easier to find.
Yeah, it's not more information, it's the information you already have. And you know, we're sort of
Strategy.
at time, but you know, this,
Yeah.
you know, take some comfort. There are a lot of people in exactly your situation.
So get together
and
with
we
them
keep
and share.
finding you know, ways to get along with this. So obviously we can't have more data than the internet based on a product line, but the information's already there. So it's a interesting question. And please.
Hi, my question is regarding the 3CX incident. So, you know, there was this malicious DLL that was injected into the source 3CX package that was like, you know, a Windows installer package, and then every system that basically had that software and downloaded that update was compromised. Now, I was wondering, you know, from your perspective, how would you use something like an SBOM? Like, what kind of, like, what do you think the key things that they didn't do that they should have done to prevent something like that?
You want?
Yeah, go for it.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So From like Windows, it's coming out from Microsoft. Microsoft has made it public that they are producing SBOMs today for Windows. And so if there are relationships that need to be monitored and things like that, you suddenly will start to have line of sight into it. And so at this point in time, the transparency was missing, and that's why people were affected. They didn't know, right? So what we're trying to do is basically try to open the transparency up a bit more. And a lot of the vendors are willing to head in this direction. So is it anything mastical? No, but.
Yeah, so we're right at time. We're supposed to stop, but if you want to fire out the questions real quick so we can hear them.
Just in one word, can you say something about the role of attestation? And
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, pay attention. 2 words. You know, say what you mean, pay attention to what people are saying. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
Hey, Paul Roberts, security manager. So SBOMs are kind of predicated on the notion that
And for everybody, sorry, for everybody, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
that there is, yeah, thank you. Great job, guys. That there's comprehensive vulnerability data for all the different components that you use, but as we know, that's not the case. Many manufacturers are not CVAs or CNAs rather, and may not disclose vulnerabilities or may not actually really look for them. So,
Or CYAs.
what do you do about that as a
The CYAs, yes. Basically, recording it is unknown, so you know where your risk area is. That's about all you can do right now until the ecosystem matures a bit more.
I'm looking forward to an interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.